Jack sat in the living room, the newspaper spread open on his lap, though he hadn't read a single word. His mind churned with thoughts far heavier than the ink on the pages, thoughts that centered on the widening chasm between him and his wife, Stacy. The house was quiet, save for the occasional soft clink of glass as Stacy applied her lipstick in the mirror. He didn't need to look up to know what came next. It was a routine he had come to recognize all too well. Another one of her nights out with friends from work, a phrase so overused it had lost any real meaning. "Don't wait up tonight, Jack," Stacy called, her voice carrying a casual air, but beneath it, he could hear something else, something bright, almost eager. Jack clenched his jaw, his fingers curling slightly over the edges of the paper. His eyes flicked toward her, watching as she carefully perfected the curve of her lips. "You mean that boss of yours," he said, his words slow, deliberate, the suspicion woven through them unmistakable. For the briefest moment, Stacy hesitated, her hand pausing mid-stroke before she resumed, masking the flicker of guilt behind a carefully constructed smile. "Yeah, so what?" she said coolly, turning back to the mirror as if his words meant nothing. "What are you going to do about it?" Jack exhaled sharply, the tension inside him tightening like a rope being pulled taut. He set the newspaper aside and stood, his patience fraying. "Stacy, come on. We both know what's really going on here. You don't even try to hide it anymore." A shadow of irritation crossed her face, her reflection meeting his gaze in the mirror. "Don't start, Jack. It's just a night out. I want to have some fun. Something you clearly forgot how to do." His stomach twisted. "Fun!" His voice rose slightly, disbelieving. "That's what you call it? You're throwing away our marriage for some fling with your boss." Stacy spun on her heel, her expression hardening like stone. "Oh, please. Don't act like this marriage was ever special." She grabbed her purse from the bed, her movements sharp with finality. "I'm going out, Jack. Deal with it." She strode toward the door, but Jack moved quickly, blocking her path. His voice, rough with emotion, wavered just slightly. "Stacy, don't do this. We can fix things. If you just talk to me." For the first time, she faltered, a flicker of something unreadable passing through her eyes. But the hesitation was gone as quickly as it came. She straightened, her resolve unshaken. "Talk? There's nothing to talk about. I'm done pretending." Her voice was like a blade, cutting through whatever fragile hope he had left. She wrenched her arm from his grasp, her next words colder than ice. "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think, Jack. Now move, loser." The door slammed behind her, the sound reverberating through the house like a gunshot. Jack stood frozen, his fists clenched at his sides, his breath unsteady. The weight of her words pressed down on him, heavy, suffocating. He had tried to hold on to her, to what they had built together, but it was slipping through his fingers like sand. His chest rose and fell with slow, measured breaths as he turned toward the coffee table. His hand trembled slightly as he picked up his phone, unlocking it with practiced ease. There, tucked away in a hidden folder labeled Evidence, lay the truth he had tried for weeks to ignore. Messages, pictures, videos, proof of her betrayal. He had told himself it didn't matter, that he could look past it. But now, as he stared at the images flashing across his screen, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Confrontation wasn't enough. Not anymore. A dark thought curled in the back of his mind, taking root. If Stacy wanted to throw everything away, she would learn what that truly meant. The bass of the music pulsed through the crowded bar, the rhythm weaving into the laughter and conversation around her. Stacy felt light, free in a way she hadn't in months. The tension of her marriage seemed distant now, nothing more than a dull whisper drowned beneath the beat. She leaned in closer to Damien, her boss, a slow smile curving her lips as he murmured against her ear. "You're too good for that loser husband of yours, Stacy." His breath was warm against her skin, his hand resting possessively on her thigh. She shivered, but not from the cold. She had denied herself for too long. Maybe Damon was right. Maybe she had been wasting her time. Her lips brushed against his ear. Her voice a sultry whisper. "You're right. It's about time I started thinking about what I really want." Damon grinned, his dark eyes gleaming with promise. "And what do you want?" Stacy let her fingers drift lazily along the collar of his shirt. "I want to live a little. I want to have fun with you." That was all the encouragement he needed. His lips crashed against hers, his hands tangling in her hair as she kissed him back, a fire igniting deep inside her. Jack was nothing but a distant memory in that moment. Damon was everything Jack wasn't: exciting, dangerous, unpredictable. Hours later, as she slipped from Damon's sleek apartment into cool night air, the rush of adrenaline had begun to fade, replaced by something heavier. A whisper of doubt. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The house was dark when Stacy stepped inside, the silence pressing against her like a tangible weight. She set her keys down on the table, the sound unnervingly loud in the stillness. "Jack," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Her stomach twisted as she walked further inside. The living room, once warm, filled with carefully chosen decor, was stripped bare. Her heart pounded as her gaze darted around, landing on the coffee table. There, among the dust of her missing belongings, lay a torn-up marriage certificate and a wedding ring shattered into pieces. Her breath hitched as she reached for the note beside it, her hands trembling. Jack's handwriting was jagged, filled with a rage she had never seen before. "You lost everything in one night. Tomorrow your life and his will change forever." A cold shiver ran down her spine. Panic clawed at her chest as she bolted up the stairs, calling his name in frantic desperation. The house remained silent, too silent. She threw open the bedroom door, expecting to find him waiting, seething, demanding an explanation. But the room was empty, his side of the closet bare. A sinking dread pooled in her stomach as she realized. Jack was gone, and she had no idea what he would do next. Stacy sank to the floor, her breath shallow and uneven, as the weight of the situation bore down on her. The bedroom around her, once a sanctuary of love and shared memories, felt like a hollow shell. Jack was gone. The drawers gaped open, empty of his belongings, and his side of the closet stood eerily bare. The only thing he had left behind was the ominous note she still clutched in her trembling hands. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of thoughts colliding in the silence. Jack had always been a man of principle, loyalty, respect, trust. He believed in them with an unshakable conviction, and she had shattered every one of them. Now he had planned something she couldn't quite grasp but knew in the depths of her soul would be worse than she had ever imagined. The eerie quiet of the house gnawed at her nerves. It had been cold and empty when she arrived, stripped of the warmth she had taken for granted. But now, an unsettling feeling crept up her spine. She was being watched. Her eyes darted to the windows, the dark corners of the room, searching for something, anything, but she found only shadows. She pushed herself to her feet, wiping her tear-streaked face with the sleeve of her coat. She had to find Jack. She had to make him listen, to explain, to beg if she had to. It had been a mistake, a stupid, impulsive mistake. She loved him, didn't she? The thought made her stomach twist. Did she love Jack, or had she simply grown used to him? Used to the familiarity, the stability, the predictability of their life together? And if she did love him, why had she been so willing to throw it all away? She wandered through the house, the silence pressing in on her. It didn't smell like home anymore. Jack had erased himself from this space with meticulous precision, leaving nothing but the echo of what once was. Her fingers skimmed over the smooth surface of the kitchen counter as she reached for a glass, desperate for something to steady her nerves. But as she opened the cabinet, her eyes landed on an envelope, thick and heavy, hidden in the back. Her pulse quickened. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably Jack's, jagged and forceful, as if each stroke had been carved with anger. With unsteady hands, She tore it open. Inside, the words were brief but hit with the force of a sledgehammer. I hope you enjoy your new life. It will be the last time you ever get to play in the shadows. A chill crawled down her spine, ice spreading through her veins. The note wasn't just a farewell. It was a warning, a threat. Her hands shook as she checked her phone. No messages, no calls, nothing from Jack. She had to find him. Now. Snatching up her car keys, she rushed out of the house, barely feeling the cold night air as she climbed into the driver's seat. Her thoughts spiraled wildly as she drove, knuckles white against the steering wheel. What had he done? What did he mean by the last time? Was this his way of saying goodbye, or was he planning something darker? As she turned onto the familiar street, her heart stopped. Jack's car was parked outside his office. She barely registered parking as she hurried inside, her heels clicking against the polished floors. The scent of fresh coffee lingered in the air, the hum of distant conversations filling the space, but none of it felt real. It was as if she were walking through a fog, the walls of her reality crumbling with each step. And then she saw him. Jack sat at his desk, fingers moving over his keyboard with practiced ease, his expression calm. Too calm, but as his eyes lifted to meet hers, the warmth she had once known was gone. His gaze was unreadable, sharp as a blade, cold as winter steel. Her throat tightened. "Jack," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I need to talk to you." He didn't respond at first, his eyes flicking back to his screen as if she weren't even there. The silence stretched between them, suffocating. "Please." She tried again, stepping closer, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. It was just a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. I never meant to." Jack finally looked up, and the iciness in his gaze made her words die in her throat. "You want to explain?" he said, his voice calm, almost too controlled. "Do you think words will make it better, Stacy? That saying, 'I'm sorry,' will fix what you did." She opened her mouth, but he raised a hand, cutting her off. "No, you don't get to explain. You had your chance, and you threw it away for a cheap thrill." The bitterness in his tone sliced through her. He stood then, moving toward her with slow, deliberate steps. "You think I didn't know? That I didn't see the signs? You think I didn't hear the rumors?" His voice lowered, dark and heavy. "I knew exactly what was happening. I just didn't want to believe it." She felt her knees buckle under the weight of his words, but she forced herself to stand tall, her chin trembling. "Jack, please. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to destroy us." His expression hardened. "Well, you did." His voice was final, unyielding. "And now it's too late." Panic surged through her. She reached for him, desperate, her fingers brushing against his sleeve. "Please, Jack. Don't do this. I love you. You're the only one I've ever wanted." He jerked away from her touch, his expression twisting with something close to disgust. "You love me?" His laugh was bitter, hollow. "You love me, but you still chose to betray me. You still chose him." His voice turned sharp. "Tell me, Stacy, did you think about me at all while you were with him?" Tears burned her eyes as she shook her head. "It wasn't like that." "But it was," he interrupted coldly. "And now I'm done. Done being your fool." The words hit harder than any slap. Stacy's stomach twisted, a sharp, aching knot forming deep inside her. She had pushed him too far. "You should leave," Jack said, stepping back, putting distance between them. His voice was eerily calm. "Don't bother trying to fix this. It's already over." She stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. Jack turned away, and for the first time in her life, she felt the crushing weight of true loss. She had shattered something that could never be repaired. As she walked out of his office, her feet heavy with regret, the realization settled deep in her bones. Everything had changed, and there was no going back.